They thought they had won. They were so sure of it. I remember lying in that hospital bed in Vancouver General, the monitors beeping their slow, indifferent rhythm, my right leg in traction and 3 ribs cracked clean through. The ceiling tiles had water stains shaped like continents. I had time to memorize every one of them, because nobody came. Let me back up. My name is not important. What matters is that I spent 41 years building something. Started with a plumbing supply business out of a rented unit in Burnaby. Nothing glamorous, nothing that would make the evening news. Just honest work. Early mornings, late invoices, cold warehouse winters where the pipes would groan and the heat took forever to kick in. My hands knew what real work felt like before my kids were even born. My wife, Colette, she was the one who kept the books for the first 12 years. Sat at the kitchen table after dinner with a glass of red wine and a calculator, making sure every number was right. We didn't take vacations until our 10th anniversary. We didn't renovate the house in Quicklem until we owned it outright. That's the kind of people we were. We had 2 children, my son Nathan, my daughter Brielle. I want to be careful here because what I'm about to tell you is not easy for any father to say out loud. I loved them. I still love them, or at least I love the people I thought they were when they were small. Nathan used to fall asleep on my shoulder during hockey games. Brielle used to bring me drawings of our dog with little speech bubbles that said things like, "I love Dad." Those children existed. I saw them. I held them. But somewhere between the drawings and the adulthood, something changed. And I think, if I am honest with myself, I think I know where I went wrong. After Colette passed 11 years ago now, pancreatic cancer 7 weeks from diagnosis to the end, I fell apart. And when I fell apart, I started giving. Giving in the way that grief makes you give, like you're trying to buy back something that's already gone. Nathan needed help with a down payment for his place in Langley. I gave it. Brielle's husband, Troy, had a business idea, some kind of e-commerce thing, and they needed capital. I gave it. Nathan's truck needed replacing. The kitchen needed renovating. The kids, my grandchildren, needed a better school district, which meant a bigger house, which meant another conversation at my kitchen table with the same look on their faces. I kept giving, and they kept needing. I told myself it was love, that Colette would have done the same. But in the quiet moments, when the house was empty and I was eating dinner alone, watching the news, I knew something was off. I could feel it the way you feel a change in weather before the clouds arrive. Something in the air. Still, I pushed the feeling down. Told myself I was lucky to have family nearby. Told myself the calls and the visits, even the short ones, even the ones that always ended with a number mentioned, were better than being truly alone. Then the accident happened. It was a February morning, the kind that Vancouver gets when people forget winter still exists. Black ice under a thin skin of wet snow, invisible until it's too late. I was pulling out of the parking lot at the superstore on North Road, and a pickup truck ran the light. Hit the driver's side. I don't remember the impact. I remember waking up to a stranger's face above me, a woman kneeling on the pavement saying, "Stay with me, you're okay. Just stay with me." I was not okay. Fractured femur, 3 ribs, a concussion that left me confused for 2 days. They kept me in hospital for 3 weeks. Nathan was called within the hour. So was Brielle. Nathan texted back. He said he was in the middle of something and would come when he could. He came on day 4, stayed 40 minutes, and spent most of it on his phone. Brielle came on day 2 with Troy. They sat across from the bed, and I noticed, even through the fog of the painkillers, that Troy kept looking around the room the way a person looks around a room when they are calculating things. When I asked Brielle if she could help coordinate my mail and a few bills while I recovered, she said she would, and then she didn't. What I found out later, what a nurse named Daisy told me, almost in a whisper, because she felt I had a right to know, was that Brielle and Troy had spoken with one of the attending physicians on day 3. The doctor had asked, carefully, about my home situation and recovery support, about whether family could help with the transition. And Troy had said, and I'm using his exact words as Daisy remembered them, "He has money. He can hire people. That's not really on us." When Daze told me that, I didn't cry. I just looked back at the ceiling, at those water stains shaped like countries I'd never visit. I had time to think in that hospital. More time than I'd had in years. No invoices, no phone calls about the business. I had sold it 3 years prior and was living comfortably on the proceeds, plus the property Colette and I had accumulated. Time in that bed does something to a person. It strips things down. You stop pretending. I thought about the last decade. I thought about the money that had moved from my account to theirs, the amounts I had never tracked because tracking felt unloving, and now I tracked them in my head with nothing to do but track. Nathan, close to 200,000 all told. Brielle and Troy, more than that. I thought about the last Christmas when Nathan had pulled me aside, before dinner, before the grandchildren had even opened presents, to mention that his mortgage renewal was coming up and rates had gone up, and he just wanted me to be aware. Just wanted me to be aware. I thought about Brielle's birthday call to me 6 months earlier, 8 minutes long, in which she mentioned 3 times that Troy's business was struggling. I thought about the fact that not once in 3 weeks in that hospital did either of my children bring me a meal, help me with physiotherapy exercises, or stay long enough to watch a full hockey period with me on the room television. I thought about Colette, who would have been there every day. On day 16, I asked to speak with the hospital's patient services team. They connected me with a social worker named Beverly, who helped me contact a lawyer, a woman named Ms. Tran, who came to the hospital on day 18. We spoke for 2 hours. I had some documents drawn up. I want to be clear about something, because I know how this sounds. I was not acting out of rage. Rage had come and gone in those first days, hot and useless, and what replaced it was something cooler. Something that felt, surprisingly, like clarity. Like the moment after you set down something very heavy that you've been carrying for a long time, and you didn't even realize how heavy it was until your hands were free. Miss Tran confirmed that I could update my will from hospital. A notary came on day 19. Everything was done correctly, witnessed, filed. My estate, including the Coquitlam house and the investment accounts, would now be directed elsewhere. A portion to a Daisy's Clinic fundraiser, which she'd mentioned offhandedly one afternoon, and which I found, when I looked it up on my phone, to be exactly the kind of organization Colette would have mailed a check to without a second thought. The remainder to a trust for my 2 grandchildren, not through Nathan and Brielle, but held independently until the children turned 25. Nathan and Brielle would receive nothing directly, a letter each from me to be delivered by Ms. Tran's office. On day 21, I was discharged. A cab took me to a rehabilitation facility in New Westminster. I told no one which one. On day 23, Nathan called my cell. I did not answer. He called again the next day and the day after. Brielle called twice. Then Nathan called 8 times in one evening, and that was the call where he left the voicemail that I still have saved on my phone. His voice in the beginning was controlled, the way it gets when he's performing calmness. By the end, it had changed. He mentioned the house. He mentioned the accounts. He said he knew something was going on, that people had told him things, that he just wanted to understand, that he thought after everything he had been through, his exact words, "After everything I have been through, he deserved an explanation." He did not ask how my leg was healing. He did not ask if I was in pain. He did not ask where I was sleeping. I listened to that voicemail twice, then put the phone face down on the table beside my rehab bed and looked out the window at the Fraser River. What I felt was not satisfaction. I want to be careful about that too, because I know what people expect a story like this to feel like: triumph, revenge, some cinematic swell of righteous music. It wasn't like that. It was quieter. It was more like the feeling you get when a long, uncertain weather system finally moves through and the air afterward is still and clean. Something had been decided. Something had been decided. Something had been true for a long time, and now the paperwork matched the truth. I stayed in the rehabilitation facility for 5 weeks. My physiotherapist, a young man named Kwame, Had me walking with a cane by week 3 and without it by week 5, mostly. He was patient in a way that had nothing to do with obligation. He just genuinely wanted me to get better. On my last day, he shook my hand for a long time and said, "You did good work." I think about that sometimes. I moved, when I left rehab, to a smaller place, a one-bedroom in Port Moody on the water. I had been thinking about it for a while, honestly. The Coquitlam house was large and full of rooms that echoed. I didn't need the echo anymore. I didn't hear from Nathan or Brielle directly for some time after I stopped answering their calls. Then Miss Tran's office formally delivered the letters. She called me afterward to let me know the delivery had been made and confirmed. She didn't describe their reactions. It wasn't her place, but the legal assistant who handled the delivery told her, and Ms. Tran passed along just this much. They had read the letters in the car, in the parking lot of her building, and neither of them had spoken for a long time. I thought about that image sometimes while I settled into the Port Moody apartment, the two of them sitting in that car in the parking lot. The letters in their laps. The silence. I hoped, genuinely hoped, that the silence was the beginning of something. That somewhere inside it they were doing the math I had done in that hospital bed. Not the financial math, but the other kind. The kind where you count up what you gave, and what you took, and what you said, and what you didn't say, and whether the person across from you, or in a hospital bed, or at a kitchen table, was someone you actually saw. I don't know if that happened. I can't know. What I know is this. The morning after I got the call from Ms. Tran, I walked to a cafe at the end of my street. Small place, smelled like dark roast and cardamom. I sat at a window table and watched the inlet. A heron stood on the rocks below, absolutely still, the way herons do, like time had agreed to wait for it. I ordered a coffee and a piece of blueberry bannock, which the owner made herself and which was better than anything I had eaten in months. I ate slowly. I watched the heron. I watched a seaplane arc low over the water toward the airport. My phone was on the table beside my cup. A message had come in that morning from my older grandchild, my granddaughter. She is 12, and she texts me sometimes on her own about her soccer games and her books. The message said, "Grandpa, did you see the Canucks game last night? Can you believe that third period?" I wrote back, I recorded it, "Don't tell me anything." "Coming to watch it tonight?" She sent back 3 hockey stick emojis and a thumbs up. I put the phone down on the table. I drank my coffee. Outside, the heron hadn't moved. I had spent a long time carrying weight that was never mine to carry alone. And in the carrying of it, I had told myself a story about what family meant. That it meant absorbing, providing, staying quiet about the cost, never saying the thing that needed to be said, because saying it might break something. What I understand now is that the thing I was so afraid to break was already broken. Had been for years. I just hadn't let myself look at it directly. The heron eventually moved, one slow extension of its wings, then it lifted off the rocks and glided out over the water without a sound, clean and unhurried, like it had simply decided it was time. I finished my coffee and left a good tip. Then I went home, and I called my granddaughter, and we watched the third period together over the phone, and she talked the entire time, and it was the best hour I'd had in longer than I could say. There's a moment, somewhere in the middle of those weeks at Vancouver General, where I stopped being angry. I'm not sure exactly when it happened. One morning the anger was there, hot and close, and the next time I looked for it, it had simply gone quiet. What replaced it wasn't peace, not yet. It was just honesty. A very still, very clear kind of honesty that I think most people spend their whole lives trying to avoid. What I understand now, looking back at all of it, the years of giving, the years of staying quiet, the accident, the silence from my son and my daughter, and finally that morning in the cafe with my coffee and the heron on the rocks, is that how we live catches up with us. Not as punishment. Not as some cosmic sentence being handed down. Just as consequence, the way water finds its level. Nathan and Brielle had spent years learning that comfort arrived without effort, that care flowed in one direction only. I had taught them that, not with cruelty, With love, genuine love, the kind that wanted to protect them from difficulty. But somewhere in all that protection I had failed to teach them the thing that actually matters, that the people who love you deserve to be seen. That's the moral part, the part I sit with most. Doing right by someone isn't only about the money you give or the roof over their heads. It's about showing up when showing up costs you something. It's about walking into a hospital room and sitting down and saying nothing, just being present, because presence is what a person needs when the rest of the world has gone uncertain. Nathan never learned that. Brielle never learned that. And I have to be honest with myself. I was part of why. But here's the other thing I learned, maybe the harder thing. It takes real clarity of mind to see a situation as it actually is, not as you wish it were. I spent years rationalizing, telling myself the visits were enough, the texts were enough, that this was just how adult children were these days, that I was being too sensitive, too old-fashioned. It took lying in a hospital bed for 16 days, with nothing but ceiling tiles and my own thoughts to finally stop negotiating with the truth. That kind of clear-eyed thinking, being willing to look directly at something that hurts, is not easy. It is, I'd argue, one of the harder things a person can do. But it is the only way forward that actually leads somewhere. And then there's what came after the clarity. Ms. Tran at my bedside, the notary on day 19, the decision to move to Port Moody, to the smaller place on the water, to let go of the house full of echoes. None of that happened because I was swept along by emotion. It happened because I made a choice, a hard one, and then I followed through on it even when part of me wondered if I was being too final. That follow-through, that willingness to act on what you know to be right, even when it's uncomfortable, that's the thing that actually changed my life. Kwame told me on my last day of physiotherapy, "You did good work." I've thought about those 4 words more than almost anything else from that whole period, because the work wasn't just the leg, it was all of it. And good work, the kind that actually counts, is always done quietly, without an audience, simply because it needs to be done. My granddaughter texted me last Tuesday about a soccer game. I went. I stood on the sideline in the November cold and I cheered too loud and she pretended to be embarrassed and then she skated over. It was field hockey, actually. I always get that wrong. And she skated over and grinned at me. That's what's on the other side of all of it. That grin. That cold November air. That's what I was making room for, even when I didn't fully know it yet.